okay. Here's another example. Hey, we've got a battery draw. Now, if you're not doing voltage drop across fuses for battery draws, you need to, because otherwise you can wake up the bus. And that will cause the draw to go up. And then you get to start your test all over again. And who hates draw tests? Me. I don't want to do them. They annoy the crap out of me. And they're time consuming, right? That's another thing you need to really charge a lot for. So if someone comes in, they're like, hey, I need you to do a draw test. My battery keeps going dead. That better be like 1.5 to 2 times your normal diag fee, especially if it's even remotely possible it's an intermittent. And then you better tell them, give me the car for a week. It's funny because the one guy back here I know for sure does this and explains, hey, F off for a bunch of times so I can have this car and you don't get to bug me. He has clearly defined procedures for these things because otherwise, good luck trying to get it tacked up. Also, if you ever watch like Super Mario Diagnostics, he laughs and he makes jokes about how the minute I point the camera at the car, it stops doing something. And I'm like, yep, that is 100% true. But this is a simple example. We do a voltage drop across the fuse. We use the matrix, and this is a bulletin that tells you the voltage drop and what it amounts to for current draw. 268 milliamps. Oh, look, the breather is also hot. Well, gee, now we have a lot of evidence that it's definitely going to be that, right? But again, 2 tests, I can easily triangulate and prove it. You could say 3 if we count the evidence the customer gave us, hey, it's got a draw, right? Pretty simple. So we'll talk a little bit about aftermarket tools now. So when we talk about aftermarket tools, again, I don't recommend having only one. I recommend having as many as you can afford because, again, I've had situations where I put 3 different tools on one car and this tool was better. And then I've had other situations where this was the worst of the 3. Can't tell you which one. But I can tell you that the only one that's worse than all of them, at least as far as graphing and data analysis, is Otis. It might have more data PIDs defined, but you're not going to be able to process and make meaning out of them as far as graphing goes. They're useless for that. So I do think it makes sense, right? These are real cheap, very inexpensive, and I've found that they are getting better very quickly. So for just basic data collection, they're also open Android. Now, what does that mean? You can exit out of the main app. You can install other apps on the tool. I know guys that run the Curian N2 graphing DVOM on these things. I can run a thermal imager on this. I can do all sorts of stuff with this, so I can get a lot more value out of the tool than just, hey, it's a scan tool, right? And I do think that that's nice. Also, the updates are pretty cheap, so, that helps. Did we get a broken slide? Oh, we did get a broken slide. Oops. I was going to show the graphing for that one, and I think I forgot to put that in there. It's good. It'll do up to 6 data PIDs. The thing I like most about the Ultra Diag for data collection, it has a microphone in it. So when you take it for a test drive, you can narrate your test drive. You go over a bump and all of a sudden the car starts acting up, you can just say, whoop, there it is. And then you go back and play the video and you go, oh, you hear yourself and you watch the data and you go, oh, that's what it was. So I do think that's really nice. That's a unique feature about that tool I find very useful. Ultra Diag, yep.
So it's basically not a flight recorder.
Yeah, essentially that'd be the good way to put it. You don't need somebody else to ride with you to correlate your data. So the Smart, that's just a tool I'd recommend because it's the best all-around value for the money. The big thing I will say that I do like about it is it's very versatile. So it does, like he was saying, it has cloud module programming database. And that cloud module programming database allows you to selectively reprogram a module, which you cannot do with Otis. This is useful for diagnostic purposes. Why? Because I've had modules that were acting like they're in a logic lock. I reflash them with this when we have the file on the server, and I can verify, oh look, I reflash it and it's still doing it, it needs a module now. Because I've verified my powers and my grounds and I've ruled everything else out. That's my last thing, but it's still a valid diagnostic procedure. I've also cleared up weird module behavior by reflashing it selectively. Get corruption in the EEPROM data, I reflash it and now it's suddenly working again. And I've had 2 or 3 cases where I've been able to do that with this. So we don't have every module in every vehicle and whatnot, but we have a lot of them, and it is nice to have as just another option on the table. Graphing, you can get 12 data PIDs on the frickin' screen at once, which is amazing, and they're pretty good, like the refresh rate's good. Now remember, refresh rate is also a function of bus speed. So if you have an older K-line car, you ain't getting good bus, no graphing. Like the graphing's gonna suck. It's gonna be slow, and remember, also, however many PIDs you're putting on the screen is going to affect how fast it's sampling as well. And that's true of all scan tools. So just remember, if you want faster refresh, choose less PIDs. We'll go back a couple there. The network topology, everyone likes that. I find that pretty useful. It's very, again, I like all the information in my face at once as much as I can. And then also the online coding database is useful as well. The bigger thing with the aftermarket tools is whether we're talking about this or the Autel, they're faster to boot, they're faster to get into, and you can do a lot of stuff faster than you would with Otis. That's what I like. Booting up the laptop, logging in, and now there's two-factor authentication they're using. Yeah, it's more tedious nonsense you have to deal with that you just don't want to. So there's an example of where we cut down the number of PIDs, and you can see the resolution increases and also the speed increases. So just a demonstration of, again, my point, right? Select less PIDs if you want to faster refresh. So then, when we're looking at where do we find the specialized functions, and if you're working on VW Audi, you find that there's a lot of things you have to do what they call guided functions. Hey, I'm relearning a sensor in the ABS module. Okay? Well, if you try to do that with VCDS, does it tell you what to do? Hey, you got to press this or you got to key on engine. No, there's no directions. Maybe in the wiki on Rostec Wiki it'll give you, maybe not. But here, our tool emulates the factory tool and basically walks you through the same steps the same way Otis would. And you know what? It's way faster to get in here than it is in Otis, aside from the fact that I think it's actually easier to navigate. So you can find that through either here and do that or guided functions. Both will get you there. Here's an example. So in the online functions, we have online coding. So there's a database. And again, we don't have every module. So that would be nice if we did, but only the manufacturer does. And online programming, same thing. We have a lot of the files, but not all of them, but it's still something nice to have in your back pocket. Or, like I tell shops, if you don't have a yearly subscription to Otis, you tell the customer, hey, look, I'll try to program this module, and here's the normal programming fee, and you charge them what you have to charge them if you hire an outside service. And if you get to do it with the tool, you get to keep the whole fee. If you don't get to do it with the tool, now you call your normal guy anyway and have him do it. Just higher profitability. So it's nice. The other thing is when you're going through and you're using the guided functions, it will ask you to identify the vehicle in more detail. This is where Parts Link 24 comes in, because then you can dump your VIN in there and you know exactly which engine it is. And you can make sure, okay, yeah, it's a 1.6 chassis Jetta. 162 and 163 are the chassis for this. 162 starting in 11 and 163 in 15, I think. Then it's going to ask you the engine, like I said. So this was a CBPA 2.0 Motronic. I can find that out again through Parts Link 24. Then it's always going to make you download a file. So yeah, you got to have internet to use this, which that's pretty typical with almost everything now. How much of your phone does anything unless it's on the internet? Virtually none of it, right? Everything's internet-based now. So here's the screen of where you get to the guided functions set system. So here we just click on whichever module we want to access guided functions. Boom. Click on ECM, guided functions. Now we can go in and we can walk through and it'll tell us, oh, you want to relearn the throttle? It'll tell you what all the preconditions are. Key on engine off, voltage thresholds, all that stuff. Then it's going to walk you through the process. And there you go. There's your ECM-related guided functions that they provide to you. And again, these are all based off of the factory tool. Then we got ABS. So remember when I was talking about the relearning of sensors? We've got, I think it's the next screen down, sorry. Cutout valves, basic setting. So all the basic settings it'll walk you through. And these are ones where if you don't have the information about what the preconditions are, good luck getting it to do it. Then you have a hard time judging something wrong with the module, something wrong with the preconditions. And yeah, it's not going to solve every single car, but the vast majority of cars I've found, it'll do the functions. And yeah, again, it's faster than Otis by a lot, so it's kind of nice. Don't tell VW, they'd probably get mad, right? But I'm going to go ahead and do a basic mechanical check. Relative compression, what are we looking for? Straight across the board, peaks and valleys. That's what we want. It's pretty straightforward in that regard. Now remember, what is that not telling me? Actual total peak compression, right? That's a meaningless thing if I want to know actual compression. But I will say, here is our vacuum capture. This is right off of the purge valve, right on the back of, so I took the purge valve line off, right off the back of the manifold. Good God, do I wish every car was set like that. Because it's a perfect spot to get a nice vacuum capture cranking. And you can see that is, again, what are we looking for? Symmetrical peaks and valleys, rise and fall. There's no valve issue on this car. I am 100% sure of that. Coding and configuration stuff. This, again, this is usually faster in my feeling if that's all it is. And sometimes, if it's not a module that has component protection problems, Some of them do, some of them don't. Component protection is essentially security so people can't take steel modules out of cars and stick them in other cars for the purposes of, you know, hey, I don't want to pay for a module, right? That's at least the rationale I've always been told. The benefit is a lot of modules don't have this, so a lot of modules you can plug right in because there's not a lot of frequent reflashes. There is no programming really required. It's adapting it to the car, which is essentially giving it the coding and making sure there's no component protection active, and then resetting any learned values, and you're done. So in a lot of cases, you can get away with that. It's just whether or not it has component protection. And some, you're not going to know until you plug it in, and you go, oh shit, component protection, right? This is why you need backups, right? This is why saying, hey, I'm going to do OE tools. Well, you're always good if you got the OE tool, or I should say almost always good. You at least have that backdoor, you'll be safe there. But if you don't have the OE tool, you should never make absolute promises to the customer. Just say, hey, I'm going to try to do this, or I think we can do this, but I can't make a guarantee. Give them the price of whatever it would cost to drag it to the dealer or call a mobile guy in or have a remote service do it. Give them that price up front. Don't give them another price. And if it happens, if you get it done and you want to give them a discount, fine. But don't give them the cheap price up front. Give them the higher price. That way you're covered no matter what. That's always the safer way to go about it. So, but I will say you do need to have a programming power supply charger. It's absolutely mandatory. There are guys that when they're mobile, if you have it, so this used to be something guys would run jumper cables from a vehicle that was running and then do that. Well, on old stupid charging systems where they run 13.6, 13.7 all the time, you might get away with that. On the other hand, if you have a bad battery, you could have a lot of ripple, bad. Also, a lot of the newer charging systems don't run higher voltages like that anymore. You know what my frickin' Nissan runs when it's cruising down the road half the time? Less. Like 12.8, 12.5. Yeah, you're like, wait, is there a problem with this vehicle? No, it's load management, smart charging. And I'm like, wow. Yeah. It's insane. It's totally insane. But that's why you can't use those kind of workaround things anymore. You got to have what you got to have, and you can't make an exception. So we talked about the selective reprogramming aspect. The tools that TOPDON makes that do this, and Autel used to do this for the programming, and I don't think they do anymore, at least none of the ones I have do. The cloud-based programming files, I think they're also present on launch. I'm pretty confident on that. But you can get it on the Max, the Elite, and the Remote if we're talking about VW Audi. So it is really a nice resource to have because, again, there are situations where being able to selectively reflash even for a diagnostic process is helpful. And then also remember, there's no data comparison taking place like there is with SVM. So we really can't be sure. If we get weird new fault codes in other modules, you need to be concerned, oops, well, we might have changed something and not realized that other stuff also had to be changed. But you can hit it with the SVM update then after that, and I'm sure it'll find the issues. Otis does a lot of stuff where I can't see what's actually happening, but then magically after I press the button and it does stuff on the backside I can't see, now everybody's happy, and I'm like, I don't know what the hell it did, but it did something, and the car's happy now, so that's all I care about. Send it out the door, the light's off, and it's happy. We're good, right? Someone who's an engineer probably would know, but